go along. Um, Great. It's now with pleasure that I'd like to introduce to you Carly. Carly, I'm going to bring you on and add a lovely spotlight on you. Sorry to put you on the spot, but you are our lovely speaker for the day. Carly was a participant in our most recent cohort of the Leading with Purpose program. So some of you may already know her. She is the founder at Future Delta, which is an organization that works at the intersection of climate and health, really focusing on cultivating the conditions for leaders and organizations to take collective actions, focusing on the well-being of current and future generations. Carly has an impressive background. I've very much enjoyed getting to know her better over the course of the past few weeks. She has a background spanning academic research, corporate strategy, and sustainability leadership. And I think what Carly brings is a really deep practical experience in translating some of these purpose-driven topics really into more organizational and concrete action. She has spent 14 years out there where she served as an impact officer as well as working on a variety of different projects. So I'm very, very happy to have you with us, Carly. And without further ado, I'll leave it with you. And please bear with me as I share. Carly has a fantastic presentation. Just give me a second.
Thank you, Sarah. I hope you can hear me all right.
We can.
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
And
That's
everyone can
brilliant.
see my screen?
I can certainly see it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Carly.
Oh, great. You go ahead to the next slide. It'd be brilliant. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to have the opportunity to share with you the two frameworks that I find highly engaging and extremely relevant as Sarah had said, as we consider how to address the challenges that face our organisations currently. So this masterclass sits at the intersection of the two frameworks that, for me, provide the compass and the map for purpose-led change. So these are the Economics of Mutuality and Bill Sharp's Three Horizons. So a quick point of clarity here. The Three Horizons framework that we're going to be considering today is not the McKinsey Three Horizons, although the one that we're considering today did grow out of that. So the McKinsey Three Horizons is a business strategy and portfolio management tool. It's mainly focused on resource allocation across time and represents time-based investment categories. Today, what we'll be looking at and what I'm referring to is Bill Sharp's Three Horizons. So this is a strategic foresight tool, and the horizons then are coexisting patterns. So many of you will know the Economics of Mutuality well from the Executive Education Programme. But for those of you who don't, I am going to provide somewhat of an overview of the key elements as we move through this session. So I start with the mutual value creation flywheel. So this is on the left side of the slide, and this is then centered around purpose. So during the Executive Education Programme, we learn about the methodology of the flywheel. And the real hook for me, the part of this process that really kind of drew me into it was discovering a decentered stakeholder engagement. So that's represented in the pale blue box. It's fine that the text isn't fully legible. You can see that, it was a great light bulb moment for me when I first heard Ruth speak about it, actually, who's on the call today. Because every stakeholder map I had ever seen before had a team or an organisation or a company at the centre. And for this stakeholder engagement that's decentered, you have a meaningful challenge at the centre. So this becomes increasingly relevant as we follow the paths of the Three Horizons. So then moving to the graphic on the right, this then is Bill Sharp's Three Horizons. I've been working as a Three Horizons practitioner and facilitator since I first learned about this in about 2020. I'm really looking forward to then sharing with you how we can use the Three Horizons to step out of the current system's constraints and consider designing the future system that we know we need, but we don't yet have visibility of. And also we don't yet have the shared language to articulate. So the Three Horizons supports us to investigate our current system and explore what's holding us here, along with considering the innovations that enable this desired future system. So I find combining Three Horizons with the Economics of Mutuality very compelling. This is because they're necessarily collective and future focused. So when combined, they support purpose-led organizations to navigate the incredibly challenging path that we face in the current system. I'm aiming today for you to leave this session feeling that your time has been well spent and that you have an increased sense of hope for the future. So if you could move to the next slide, please, Sarah. This is how our time together is going to be structured. So there's 3 thematic sections, each is followed by a pause and a prompt for reflection and hopefully some sense-making dialogue. The duration of each section is about 15 minutes. You're invited to add your questions into the chat as they come to you, or you can hold them until we pause. I'm going to cover at the end a case illustration if we have time, but we'll be guided by the level of interaction during the pauses. So yeah, we can interact as much as we like. My contact details are at the end of the presentation, and all of the slides, as Sarah said, will be available to you. If we can, and just cover as well here, it's intentional that section 1 covers Horizon 1, section 2 covers Horizon 3, and section 3 covers Horizon 2, and that will become apparent as we move through. So yeah, next slide, please, Sarah. I think it would probably help if you knew a little bit more about me so that we can kind of get to know each other. Hopefully then there'll be interaction during the pauses, but I'll also then we'll complete a check-in after this. I already put in the chat, I live near Oxford in the UK. I've got a background in medical lab research with my degree in applied genetics and a PhD in immunology. So I've spent some time in medical research in the lab and then moved to managing global clinical trials with Bayer, where I was, as Sarah said, for a number of years. I was Bayer's first impact officer, so this entailed translating the ambitious global objectives and targets into local market relevant strategies and implementing these. I established a sustainability group then in the UK, and after that moved into fully focusing on decarbonising our clinical trials. So that's what I did in sort of 23, 24. Over 2025, I started to consider the opportunities that might lie outside the organisation for me to realise my positive impact in healthcare, environmental sustainability, and then in the beginning of this year, I founded Future Delta. So you can see on here, just in case this is interesting for anybody who wants to talk more about it or connect on this, I'm a strategic advisor for healthcare decarbonisation for the Sustainable Healthcare Coalition, so established by the NHS and the UK government over a decade ago now to green the NHS. And I'm also an advisor on residual carbon management for Curate on healthcare and pharma, so carbon removals. As I've mentioned, I'm a 3 Horizons practitioner and supporting teams to have strategic foresight in their purpose-led long-term resilience action. And this is then combined with mutual value creation now, having completed the course at the end of last year. I'm developing this work into a research programme with HULT, so the International Business School, investigating action on climate and health in large organisations. So we can go to the next slide, and I would invite you to spend some time looking at these different horizons. This is a beautiful graph. It's conceptually so simple initially, and it provides us with these repeated opportunities to revisit our understanding of what is now, what can be, and how we can collectively move from the present to the future. So Horizon 1 represents the dominant pattern of today. You can see on the y-axis is pattern, and then on the x-axis is time. On purpose, there's no scale. Horizon 1 can be a very comfortable place for some of us. There's a good reason for this. We do want to conserve some of the elements that happen today into our future. But Horizon 1 is also the situation that we want to deal with. So this is where you can start to orientate yourself within your organisation, consider the strategic fit for the future. And Horizon 1 shows us where the current pattern or business as usual is showing signs of strain, potentially not opening up to the opportunities and the long-term resilience for your organisation. So as Horizon 1 moves through time, it dips down and gives way to something new, which is Horizon 3. This will eventually replace Horizon 1 as the new normal, as this time axis moves along. And as I mentioned, there will be elements of Horizon 1 that we want to retain so that they're worth conserving. Horizon 3 then needs to be brought into being, and Horizon 2 is the transition space. It responds to the weakening of Horizon 1 and the possibilities of Horizon 3. In Horizon 2, things are being tried out. It's an unsettled, messy, complex, and uncertain space. It's expected that some, but not all, of the elements of Horizon 2 will become established into our future system, so adopted and become Horizon 3. It's not simply a bridge from business as usual to where we want to go. It really is the section where there's lots of innovation, experimentation. So what we're doing here is considering 3 ways that the future evolves. Horizon 1 is what we have now. Horizon 3 will replace it. And Horizon 2 is the transition between 1 and 3. So 3 Horizons is a really powerful practice because it doesn't simply mark today, midterm, and long term. These are 3 different ways that we behave in the present moment. So the future always comes out of where we are now. I'm hoping that I can offer you potentially a new lens and a shared language of attention as we help to make sense of our agency regarding the roles we have in our organisations. Maybe where you're trying to get to and what to do in that complex and often uncomfortable in between. So the 3 Horizons graphic that you see here, perhaps sometime for some of you it'll be the first time you see it, some perhaps you're familiar with it. This will underpin our conversation today. We'll spend time in each horizon considering the sort of leadership traits and how this links to mutual value creation. And you'll also notice that as we go along this path, this is not a linear journey. We're going to start in the present, move to the future, and then come back to the messy middle. So then as a check-in, now that I've gone over the graph, the next slide, please, Sarah. There are 2 parts to this. When you now look at this graph on the right-hand side of the graphic, what one word comes to your mind when you consider how this makes you feel right now? Hold on to that word. And then the second part is considering what type of energy do you feel you're arriving to our time together with today? Have a look at the descriptions of the different horizons. So Horizon 1 energy is your kind of steady, managing, optimizing energy. Horizon 2 then is the messy, creative, experimental. And then Horizon 3 is your visionary, you're feeling spacious and future conscious. When you're ready, and if you want to, you're invited to put into the chat the one word that graphic makes you feel, and then the type of energy that you're arriving with. And I'm just going to pause there for a minute so that you can have a think about that. It's given us an indication of who's here today. Extra points if you're the first to get into the chat. Lovely. It's good to have a messy start. Good to see you, Anjali. This is great. I think we're all feeling quite future focused, so this will be fun. I have experience before running workshops on this that people can arrive with the kind of forward focused energy, but also really enjoy sitting in Horizon 1. Excellent. Curiosity is a must. Thank you very much, everybody. If other thoughts come into your mind, please put them into the chat, and we can use them to inspire conversation as we move along. So next slide, please, Sarah. So Bill Sharp's 3 Horizons framework was developed to help us navigate exactly the kind of complex, transformative change that the economics of mutuality asks us to lead. So Horizon 1, I'll refer to it sometimes as H1, is today's system. It's the operating model that's dominant now. Horizon 2 or H2 is the space of emergent innovation, experimentation, and transition. And then Horizon 3 or H3 is the regenerative future model. So this pattern of hope, as Bill Sharp calls it. The economics of mutuality then asks, what does mutual value creation for people, our planet, and long-term prosperity look like? It gives us a compass where 3 Horizons is a map, is how I like to think of them. Together, these 2 frameworks provide us both with the direction and the orientation. And for me, this is a really exciting combination. So next slide, please. I'm just going to draw your attention to where the 3 Horizons framework sits when we're considering agency and uncertainty. And so during transformation of the systems within which we operate. So you can see there the y-axis is agency and the x-axis is uncertainty. And there are numerous different methods for navigating the different amounts of each of these properties. But Three Horizons is not just a planning tool in the traditional sense. It's a perception, and as I've mentioned, it's a foresight tool. Three Horizons is termed as an adaptive pathways approach, and each horizon represents this different pattern of the future, which allows us to collectively reperceive our current reality from a future pattern of hope. And very importantly, each horizon carries with it a distinct voice. So these are the different ways of seeing the world, and we'll go into this more in more detail later. We're going to try to create a reflective space. Ruth had mentioned feeling spacious, so this is great. This is what we're trying to achieve. Some time to explore what does leadership for mutual value creation look like across time horizons. So let's go directly to section 1. Next slide, please. Section 1 is about the present, what we can see clearly if we're really willing to look. We're going to explore Horizon 1, the dominant system, and ask, where is the system losing its strategic relevance? And where is it under strain? And what elements of Horizon 1 are worth conserving? Thank you, Sarah. So we're going to look at the gap between what the current operating system within our organisations was designed for and what the world needs now. So this is, by definition, then the system strain. We'll use Three Horizons as our shared language of attention. So what are we really looking at? What do we care about? Where does our attention draw us? And it's a way of naming the patterns that many of us feel, but we don't always have the collective vocabulary to describe. So we're going to connect the patterns to the challenge within the economics of mutuality, which is how do we shift to genuine mutual value creation for people, our planet, and long-term prosperity? So it's really important to recognise that Horizon 1 is not the enemy. It's Horizon 1 that keeps the lights on for us. It's where most of us spend most of our time managing the performance of the system, protecting the reputation of our organisations perhaps, and optimising processes. So the Horizon 1 mindset then is one of stewardship. It's asking, how do we protect and sustain what we've built? And it values efficiency and reliability. But there's a risk in Horizon 1. It's the risk of overinvestment of time, of energy, and of finance, and critically of attention. When a system pours all of its attention and resource into maintaining what already exists, it will gradually become less capable of imagining or enabling what might need to replace it. So when you consider your organisation, I'm sure you can see some elements of Horizon 1 or H1 logic, thinking about where the system is genuinely excellent and where that excellence becomes a constraint to innovation. It's essential then to pay attention to the critical elements of Horizon 1 that we do need to adapt and repurpose. These are the glimmers of the future in the present, and we want to evolve these over time. So next slide, please. It's really important to recognise that the economics of mutuality doesn't condemn Horizon 1. It does a very effective job of diagnosing it. So when we apply the economics of mutuality, or as EOM, as I've put in here, we can do this with the lens of Horizon 1 and start to see not just what the current system produces, but also what it consumes in doing so. What potential future value is eroded? And also there's relational trust, there's ecosystem integrity, for example, employee discretionary effort. These are often drawn down silently in Horizon 1, and then they're only noticed when they're gone. This is the hidden cost then of single value extraction. The economics of mutuality makes that cost legible, and that is a really essential ingredient to begin and drive change. The shift from the Horizon 1 dominance to Horizon 3 creation then begins at the moment an organisation honestly interrogates its current value flows. Ruth, would this be a good time to introduce you, and perhaps you can comment on the link for Three Horizons in the content of the Leading with Purpose executive education program. Let me know if it's a good time. If it isn't, I would carry on.
Yeah, no, I think this is an excellent time. I'm happy to jump in and quick introduction to me because I don't know if I've met all of you. So I'm Ruth. I'm one of the strategic leads at Mutual Value Labs, and actually I'm taking over as program director for the executive education program for this cohort, the cohort coming up. So if you've just done it, then you might remember me from speaking on some of the modules. Carly and I have been working together on some thinking of how we can use the three horizons in organizations to help explore the concept of value, value creation, value protection, and what value we recognize and measure potentially, but mainly think about recognize and what we also when we don't recognize value, what might be eroded or lost. And so what Carly is explaining here in how Horizon One might allow you to explore what value is recognized today, and how Economics of Mutuality points out that a lot of the time, a lot of businesses are engineered around recognizing pure financial value, and any other value is recognized in relation to the impact on the financial value for the organization. And so we've designed a workshop that uses the three horizons framework to help organizations or teams explore what value is being recognized today. And then as we work through the horizons, we start to explore what might feel different about what value we recognize in a different set of rules, in a different paradigm, which is where we imagine that we will be in a Horizon 3. And so we've designed this workshop that puts this into practice, and we use a case study, which actually we teach on the executive education program as well. So any of you that have been through it who might have heard Grant talk about the Cassava Brewery case study, we use that case study to help bring everyone out of their day-to-day context and explore where value might be recognized in different horizons. And it's just I feel like it's such an amazing way of using the three horizons to explore what is recognized today and what the potential could be. That's probably all I'll say at the moment. I might come back to how we're adapting the executive education program a little later, Carly, if that's okay. Does that feel right
Yeah,
for you, or would you like me
absolutely.
to go into that now?
No. Why don't we do that perhaps after the next break?
Sounds good.
Okay. So, Sarah, if you can go to the next slide, and I think we're all ready to put the prompt into the chat. Let's consider for us all perhaps what feels increasingly difficult to sustain in business as usual. And where do you notice the organizational immune responses to change? So that's just as an idea for something that we can discuss. But otherwise, we're now, we have some time. It's kind of up to us how long we take. If anybody would like to ask any questions now, please feel free to come off mute or type into the chat. It's equally fine if you want to hold your questions until we've been through all of the horizons. I'm very happy to continue talking about this, as you can probably guess. I'm also, really happy to have conversations. Go ahead. I can't see anybody, so I can't see if you're coming off mute.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question, but I can wait. Whatever is better for you.
You go for it. If I'm going to answer it in the future, I should tell you that. If not, let's go for it.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Susana. Thank you for organizing this presentation, which I find extremely useful. I'm working with two colleagues that are also certified consultants from UM in Latin America. And we find extremely challenging because the mindset of the top executives is very conservative, very focused on profit making. And it requires a shift in mindset and how you view things. I would love to hear if there is an opportunity from you. How have you worked on that? Because there is a total shift that is needed in terms of what really makes sense, especially now in this context. And it's difficult to convince people that they really need to change. People don't like change in general.
Mm-hmm.
They are scared. They want business as usual. But I would love to hear if you can share some of your experience, or how did you manage that part of the psychological aspect of the whole process?
It's a really beautiful question. Thank you.
Thank
So for me, there's maybe three key elements. Two of them are quite linked. One is the sort of order that you can help people step through the sort of temporal logic or time logic of an organization. So if you follow the sort of decentered stakeholder approach with the economics of mutuality, and you discover together really what is your collective meaningful challenge, and you sit in Horizon 1 in business as usual, where you are now, and genuinely consider, what does that voice say? What does that feel like? And what does that look like? And you're very open. So the facilitation technique here is really collecting all of the different voices who are now looking at Horizon 1. What does that look and feel like? One thing that underpins this is stepping away from the day to day. So if this can be in a location that is different to perhaps the office that people usually work in, that makes a really significant difference to people's mindsets when they come into this conversation. That's the first thing, and I'll expand on this as well as I go through, because I think this is a really this question almost underpins how do we get to Horizon 3. The next point is around the reason why you start in Horizon 1 and then you go to Horizon 3. Because people do feel uncomfortable without this kind of strategic temporal plan. You'd think it would be now, next, and then what you finish with. But actually, if you bring people to the future, one that we can't see but we know that we need, it really does remove the constraints and the challenge around having the genuine, honest conversations about where we need to get to, perhaps as a business or as a group, whatever setting. So if you take people from 1 to 3, again in a setting that's perhaps not their normal day to day, and you genuinely invite everybody to contribute, because this is another thing, is assessing the sort of stakeholders that you have in the room, then you really start to hear the language changing. I would say that Ruth and I experienced this really strikingly when we were running one of a pilot workshop for what we've just discussed, what Ruth just mentioned. People's language changes when you bring them into Horizon 3 and almost give them the opportunity and the permission to talk as if they are unconstrained. It doesn't have to be optimization at that point. It genuinely can be, where is the system change? It is only then that you bring them back to Horizon 2 and they're reperceiving what can be done from the future without the current system constraints. This is the real key about having the economics of mutuality applied over these time horizons, in my opinion, being able to take people out of now and far into the future, then bring them back. The other thing that really underpins this for me, and this is part of my research, is this the state of spaciousness. So moving out of the doing and being quite sort of being. Maybe there's some theory from Sharma underneath this as well. When we really consider what it is to be human and what we want to achieve through our organizations, everything that our organization affects, our impacts, then we really start to consider the opportunities. But this also has to be very inclusive. It needs to have the right stakeholders together, because there needs to be an understanding of how and why you're solving and focusing on this meaningful challenge. So there's a few things under there. I hope that starts to be useful. I think there are going to hopefully be some answers to your question as we move through the different horizons as well. But really couldn't have been a better question to start. Thank you very much. I'm trying to see the chat. I wonder if Sarah or Ruth could take a look for me.
Yeah, so we've heard in the chat, we've got often the strongest impulse for change comes from external pressure or risk. So that's
I think that's lovely, and I can say that is absolutely what I used to convince the organization where I used to work that the role that I was trying to create was necessary. It was completely risk focused. For me, then I was using the language I knew that was needed to make sure that there was an understanding of the value that we were eroding by not looking at the potential innovations for the future. Again, it was getting the right stakeholders together. So the risk manager in our organization was critical to me at this point, because they already had a lot of the H3 elements mapped. We just weren't using that language together, and it wasn't recognized what we could do now to mitigate those risks. So I would say it's completely legitimate to be looking at it from that lens, but it needs to be part of a kind of broader conversation. So if it's only focused on risk, it can become almost too simplistic again and remove the awareness of the externalities. So risk is key, but it can be part of a larger conversation. And having the right stakeholders again in the room as you're having that conversation, having, if there is that role, if there's that risk manager role, saying it directly to the people who need to hear it makes a big difference. And then you can bring the voice in around the kind of innovations you can explore in Horizon 2 to get there. I think we all know that making the conversations too simple almost underplays the importance of the need for change, but risk for sure is an important part of the conversation.
There's one more response in the chat, and then I can see that Jane's got her hand up. So I'll just share the chat. So Alice shares that in terms of what feels increasingly difficult to sustain in BAU, loss of purpose and motivation. And the immune response she's noticing is time constraints. So people not being able to take a step back to identify needs, opportunities, and plan. It's not a priority when we need to deliver. I hope I've done that justice. Alice, please feel free to come off mute and add on that.
I mean, it also feels like that could be so many people's challenge as well, right? We also can have sort of, like we'll say, pockets or glimmers of the future happening within the organization, but then they get eaten by Horizon 1. They don't get the opportunity to scale. I'll go into that in a minute. I would say the purpose and the motivation does in part have to come from you internally, right? I'm sorry, my daughter is sending me multiple WhatsApp messages. I hope that you can't hear that too much. I'm not going to look at
We
them.
can hear some light binging.
It'll be
in your
about baking.
background.
I'm sorry.
But do check your daughter doesn't need you urgently. That's okay.
There's going to be an internal compass that's very important for you as well, to understand if what you're being able to realize within your organization is sufficient for you. For me, I was incredibly honest about this at Bayer, and for me, my own personal values really helped to lead me down some very important pathways within the organization, which was sometimes at least twice creating a role that didn't exist because I could convince the organization it was needed. Again, this was based around risk, and it was based around my kind of values conflict about not being able to see a recognition of the erosion of value for the organization. So it slightly comes from the inside about loss of purpose and motivation. And I would say where you can find the reinvigoration of that is by spending maybe time in groups like this. I very intentionally did seek a sort of tribe outside of my organization so that I could have the kind of conversations I didn't feel free enough to say inside, not for any reason other than I was just trying to use language that perhaps wasn't recognized or shared yet, and then working out and learning from other people how to bring that back into the organization. Is a real conflict for me because I work so closely on climate and health. There's a huge urgency to this topic, but actually quite a lot of what we need to do needs this time and spaciousness and stepping back and taking a breath and understanding how we bring people with us. Because if we push too hard on a system too quickly, we create barriers that otherwise wouldn't have been there. So there's a huge kind of balancing act there for us. What can we push on? How hard to make sure that we don't get the kind of pushback from the system, this immune response, but we're still driving change. And that has to come from conversations with other people in your organization, as well as people from maybe external groups that you know are thinking in the same way, perhaps have had positive achievements. I'd say, just to finish on that question, because hopefully some of it is also answered moving forward, I also did seek joining pre-competitive collaborations. So a huge part of my work with the Sustainable Healthcare Coalition is a very significant pre-competitive collaboration with the kind of pharma companies who never used to talk to each other. So you see the Sustainable Markets Initiative and their Health Systems Task Force, all the big pharma are then talking to each other on, for example, supply chain decarbonisation. A complete no-brainer that you need to do together, but that wouldn't have happened 5+ years ago. So this is another thing where you can almost calm the immune system of your organisation if you can find others who are already doing it. Because then you know the response can't be, oh, we can't do that, because you can say, but they are. So it's a kind of beautiful benchmarking opportunity. There was a hand up as well. Did you say Jane has her hand up? And if I haven't answered your question fully, Alice, please come back in the chat, or we've got another 2 opportunities for a pause.
Thank you. Hi, Carly.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm one of the tutors on the Mutual Value Creation Programme. So it's really fascinating to hear more. I've heard of Three Horizons, but I'm really enjoying finding out a bit more
I'm
about
really
it.
pleased. Thank you, Jane.
I mean, it's not a question, it's just kind of an answer to a couple of your questions, some of the things I observe, because I work with a lot of corporate clients. I think something at the moment that, and maybe some people on the call are experiencing this, is that and climate is a good example, which is, I don't think there's anyone, well, apart from the complete deniers, who don't realize we're kind of driving a car off a cliff. But if anything, my observation is that there are more leaders in what I'd call in the grip than ever, i.e., somewhat paralyzed in being able to, even though they know, they can't say they don't know, but it's almost in the just too difficult box. Uh, that's really challenging. And I think certainly in PLCs, the overriding constraint is shareholder primacy. And that shows up. And I've discovered a new term. Well, I've kind of decided this is a term I've been looking for to try and describe something, which I'm just going to share, which is this idea of time arbitrage. So when we talk about the economics of mutuality, we talk about lots of things, but we haven't spent a lot of time on the very real short-term, long-term tensions, and the fact that when you're under enormous pressure to deliver short-term shareholder results, it's easy to kind of arbitrage time. All the time we're kind of mortgaging our future for delivering results today. So I just thought that was a really useful term, trying to describe those fine margins by which we always go, well, we'll put that off for tomorrow and we'll deliver today. And it's a massive, massive, I don't think we can underestimate what a constraint it is for any PLC to do any of this work. And we'll see lots of well-known ones that are pulling back from commitments they've made because of that pressure. I'm not excusing it. I'm just going, this is the reality we're living in, Horizon One, that we have to try and navigate. And the spaciousness piece, and therefore, if anything, and this is what the work teaches us, is that what we're trying to explain to people is that because we are applying an imperfect value creation model, because we're only looking at the money most of the time, that we're therefore, when we're making decisions for the business on a short-term time frame, we are making decisions that very slowly over time erode value in our business, but we don't notice because we're not measuring some of those value points, and therefore it might take 20 or 30 years before we notice that something's changing. And the spaciousness is part of this, because what I'm noticing is that constant restructurings and efficiency drives and productivity programs, and every 2 years, that everyone's just working harder and harder, longer hours for relatively less money than they were. And our human capital is deteriorating, our people's engagement is deteriorating, and frankly, people just don't have the time or bandwidth to think of anything new. So I'm just expanding on what you've already said. That's the lived reality for a lot of people in corporate life. Even if they want, they can see that things need to change. It's almost like we can't get ourselves out of the hole. Now, fortunately, there are, in your Horizon 2 point, there are innovations like mutual value creation that potentially can give us some hope and aspiration in small ways to start to build that future. But I think it's really important that we recognize what people are having to deal with, and that this, if you choose to commit to this journey to create a better future, then it's quite a big commitment. And I want people to do that, to in our little parts of the world, to do our little bit to try.
I would say
and move
that
forward.
recognition of the challenge, linking that with not bringing any shame into the conversation. Again, H1 is not the enemy, and we can't switch it off and jump to 3. It would be an unjust transition then, necessarily. So I think your points are incredibly valid. A few things. John Elkington's Substack has been talking about time a lot recently, so I suggest that you take a look at that. It's very interesting. And in a group I'm in with Ruth, the Purpose in Practice community, I am sort of leading some ideas around the temporal logic of organizations. If an organization isn't committed to sort of relevance and impact and resilience on over the long term, then purpose will fail. There has to be a desire of the organization to be relevant over a long time period for this to all be relevant for it. That completely underpins it for me. If there's an H1 lock that they're not willing to consider, I'm afraid there's maybe time to reframe the meaningful challenge. These are fantastic. Let's move. I'll quickly cover Horizon 3. Sarah, if you can go to section 2. Really happy for people to keep putting their thoughts into the chat as we go along. Otherwise, there'll be another pause. But let's whiz through. So we're moving to Horizon 3 now. We're going to step over the messy middle and into the future. And I'd said this earlier, that this order does sometimes feel awkward because we want to plan sequentially, but Three Horizons now invites us to do something different, and this is perceive the present from the future. So we are now inviting a pattern of hope to orientate our navigation. So next slide. No, let's stay on that one. That's absolutely fine. I was looking at the section slide. So Horizon 3 represents the one before, please, Sarah. Sorry. The Horizon 3 represents the transformational change and the new paradigms or logics, but it's not a destination on a timeline. This is a pattern of intention. This completely links to what I just said about long-term resilience. It's this future then that the economics of mutuality is pointing towards, one where you have mutual value creation and that's becoming business as usual, and they're measured and managed together due to the shared moral imagination that you can have in Horizon 2, which we'll go to in a minute. Horizon 3 then encourages this capacity to see beyond what exists and to hold that possibility without certainty and to act with purpose in the face of ambiguity. This, again, is very challenging if you then suddenly have a new CEO or if your board is reordered and everything gets thrown up in the air and almost the puzzle pieces fall down in different places. That's completely understood. But the Horizon 3 mindset is visionary. It focuses on designing a future worth creating, and it's very good at mobilizing the coalitions that you need to build that. And that links to the comment I made before. We're really struggling to do this. There is no one actor within the system who will create system change on their own. Pre-competitive collaborations are incredibly powerful for doing this because that also guards you against anything being sucked back into Horizon 1 because the coalition almost has the forward-facing power and things are hopefully drawn back to their attention is drawn back to Horizon 3. But Horizon 3 does carry a risk too, as it says at the bottom there. And this is detachment. If the visionary leaders lose their connection with the operational reality, then they lose organizational buy-in. We've seen this happen, all of us, I'm sure. So the Three Horizons then protects that honesty that we need to maintain here. So next slide, please. We can say again that Horizon 3 is not a destination on a timeline. It's the pattern of intention, and it shapes the decisions that are made today. And it's precisely where the economics of mutuality becomes the compass for the Horizon 3 leadership. The economics of mutuality framework then does ask, what does value creation look like when it's genuinely mutual and it's for people, for our planet, and for long-term prosperity? That question is the Horizon 3 vision made actionable. So when leaders hold the economics of mutuality purpose framework as their sort of H3 anchor or North Star, they do gain something crucial. And that's a way to evaluate what we're going to come back to, Horizon 2 experiments, not against the current Horizon 1 metrics, the kind of dominant metrics, but against the future that they're trying to create. So the question can shift from, for example, does this generate return now, which we know is a common question, to does this move us towards sustainable mutual value creation at scale? And that reorientation is one of the most powerful things for me that's achieved by combining these two frameworks. And it does ground it in reality. So we can quickly go to the next slide, another prompt, and please, anybody bring your questions in again before we move to Horizon 2. So I'd be very interested if you can consider, again, you can share them if you like, or bring any other thoughts that you want to into the room. And that's which metrics of your organization do protect Horizon 3, rather than collapsing the potential transformation back into Horizon 1. Even if it's just you thinking to yourselves that keeps your increase in hope, your rate of increase in hope high. There will be glimmers of the future in your organizations, but how do you protect them from falling into Horizon 1? Oh, there's a nice comment in the chat I can see now. I've figured out how to make sure I can see it. That there's an observation of a Horizon 3 mindset at certain times. Again, I think this is beautiful, very linked to sort of temporal points. And this is when you have a strategy update. There's the person in the chat has written, and then the daily decisions are taken with that H1 mindset. And let's remember that that is also justified and understandable and sometimes really important. Again, this will not be a just transition if we tried to turn the H1 light off and turn the H3 light on. This is a transition over time. But if we only ever think about Horizon 1 in our day-to-day, then we never have the opportunity or remove the blocks that can lead us to the future that we know we need to move to. And this isn't only a sort of moral and values-based decision. We will notice the strategic relevance of the organizations coming down. So that's a great observation. Thank you. Anybody else keen to come off mute? Any comments?
Just a very quick time check as well. We have about 10 minutes while people write their questions or have a bit of a think about their questions. So I just wanted to
That's great.
let everyone know we've got 10 minutes left.
We can, if people are formulating questions or if things have been covered, we can move on to the next slide so that we at least cover Horizon 2. And there's a few really key points I'd like to make in here. And then, there's some really important information at the close that we can try and make sure and have a few minutes at the end too. So going on to section 3 in Horizon 2, the bit that I find really interesting. This is the space that is hardest to describe. It's hardest to lead in. And again, from my experience, it's the most fun and the most generative when you have the navigation tools to make this a reality and a conversation within your organizations. This is where leadership has the greatest capacity to evolve. So it's this messy, experimental, uncertain, creative middle. The Horizon 2 leadership mindset then is one of balance. So this is balancing the operational demands of H1 and the aspirational pull of H3, exactly to the person's point in the chat. Somebody had put curiosity at the beginning in the chat. This is a wonderfully inevitable feeling in Horizon 2, and adaptability is also essential. So there's an acceptance that learning occurs then in Horizon 2 through iteration rather than through just optimizing processes. This is more interesting and more exciting than that. The leaders in Horizon 2, they protect fragile concepts and emerging experiments and the relationships that there's absolutely no way you can prove they have a return on investment with your Horizon 1 metrics and logic, but they do build towards one. And you can understand this because the Horizon 2 leaders can then craft these bridges between Horizon 1 operators who want the certainty and the return on investment and the Horizon 3 visionaries who are holding the possibility. It really grounds it in reality when you're in the middle. So if you stay, on the previous, brilliant, thank you. So Horizon 2 kind of leadership traits involve protecting kind of seedling ideas from premature evaluation through the lens of the current system. We know that some of these great ideas will fail because they're kind of sucked into the business as usual. That can just be a time constraint that we just talked about before. So I'll cover this more on the next slide, but there's also the important reiteration here that we do all have the capacity to lead across these time horizons simultaneously. We're looking at the individual horizons here, but the traits of leadership styles that we see here then can be exhibited almost on an hourly basis. So next slide, please, Sarah. The greatest risk in Horizon 2 then is that Horizon 1 pressures suffocate what's emerging. This is so often observed. We've seen our sustainability teams, innovation labs, purpose-led initiatives. They're vulnerable to being squeezed to conform to Horizon 1 norms and then dominance of Horizon 1 metrics. This is so beautifully described using these terms H2 minus and H2 plus. So H2 minus are sustaining innovations. They can become captured by H1, and then H2 plus are they're transformative innovations, and they can support this progression and enablement of H3. So these two types of innovations, if we look at H2, these genuinely move on from Horizon 1 and make Horizon 3 more likely. Horizon 2 innovations are kind of like sticking plasters. They prop up a failing Horizon 1, or they get absorbed into it and they end up losing their innovative power. And I'm sure that you've observed both types of innovation. It's really interesting to start thinking about them in this way. But even fantastic ideas if not treated in the right way, can become H2 and fall away. So it's just really important distinction to make. And then in the next slide, please. I just said that the most, the most important insight from the Three Horizons framework for leadership development is absolutely that you don't have to choose one. You can navigate against all three, and this is called triple stewardship. Seeing the Horizon 1 locks, the Horizon 2 innovations, and the Horizon 3 future patterns together. You guard today, keeping H1 viable, not by defending everything, but by ensuring that the present system can sustain the transitions and innovations that Horizon 2 requires. You're nurturing tomorrow by investing in H2 experiments and protecting them. And then you're also seeding the future. So the economics of mutuality here provides the values-based engine for this triple stewardship. It tangibly defines what mutual value creation looks like and gives us a measurement framework so we know we're actually moving towards it and can communicate that within our organizations. So next slide, Sarah. I'm going to really whiz through this quickly because you'll have all this information. H2 is where the new coalitions form then, and the decentered approach, placing the challenge at the centre, not the organisation at the centre, is a natural architecture for Horizon 2 collaboration across the boundaries. You have mutual value as the selection criteria. You've got the flywheel in motion, so that figure that we had at the beginning. You've also got decentered stakeholder engagement as a navigation tool. And Horizon 2 really is where the economics of mutuality has a significant impact. H1 has this weight of incumbency, H3 has the clarity of vision, but H2 is this liminal space where the emerging fragile ideas are forming. And this is exactly where the economics of mutuality measurement framework is critical, because it's not a reporting tool, it's more like a governance discipline. The framework then gives us clarity and protection of the H2 plus innovations, making sure that they're guarded against premature evaluation. I won't go, so if you can move to the next slide about the voices, I won't go into this into too much detail, but this is what we do in the workshop, looking at the hidden value, listening to the voices of each horizon. These are really interesting because you can spend time being these voices, and you have two different types of patterns. On the left-hand side is the pattern of caution, the right-hand side is the pattern of enterprise. If you hear each of these voices with a negative mindset, neither of them make sense to you. Each of them almost make you sort of bristle with their way of thinking. They're essentially different worldviews. If you move from this negative mindset to the positive perspective, you value the different elements of the voices and understand how they can bring really important insights to what you're trying to do. There's so much more to say about the voices, but you get the idea from this. And if you want to know more and about the workshop, there's contact information at the end. I'm going to finish there. There's a prompt and there's a provocation. I just quickly read them out. Where do you think there are these glimmers of durable mutual value creation that strengthen long-term relevance? And where do you think you're personally operating as a Horizon 2 leader? In my view, the greatest lever for transformation is what people pay attention to. So that's what the Three Horizons can help us with. If we go to the checkout slide, I won't go over the clinical trial case study. That's my world that I love talking about, but it's on the slide for you to look at another time. You've got a final prompt there that perhaps you can think about in your own time, thinking about this Horizon 2 plus action that you could take without delay. You leave here with these beautiful pictures and ideas. Perhaps you knew it already, but perhaps it's re-engaged you with it. What Horizon 2 action protects a Horizon 3 vision for your organization? And then think about that with an economics and mutuality lens. What does that look like in action? That's just an invitation. The last couple of slides from me is about Three Horizons giving us the ability to see. Economics and mutuality is how we have the navigation and tools for action and frameworks. So you have the economics and mutuality as a sort of values-based engine enabling purposeful H2 and H3 to come into being. And then that next slide is just some resources. There's a very new podcast. It's brilliant. You will enjoy it. Full stop. Then there's a book and a video. But I love all three of these things. I wanted to share them with you. I'll go back to Sarah or Ruth for the last minute.
Thank you so much, Carly. That was a absolute gander through the framework and an incredible insight. I don't think that I can add any more to that other than to say thank you. And I know we have just scratched the surface. It's a bit of a spoiler alert to say that we are going to incorporate the Three Horizons framework into the next cohort of executive education. If you've done a previous cohort or you haven't done it or not planning to do it, you can let us know and we can try and share some more resources with you if you're particularly interested in this. And obviously Carly's sharing her contact details, but we are going to weave it through and have a specific session on introducing it as well, which is really exciting. So do let us know if that's sparking some interest. And as Carly said, we've designed a workshop to go into organizations to help explore how thinking in a totally different set of paradigm rules might unlock some opportunities for organizations for relevant value creation. And I won't say anything more than that, I don't think. Is there anything else we need to point to that I've missed, Sarah? I'm looking for you shaking your head or waving at me. If not, thank you so much, Carly. That was amazing and so inspiring. Really hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. And if you have any questions or follow-up comments, we'd love to keep the conversation going.
Great. Thank you so, so much. Thanks, everybody. I will share the slides, Carly's details, and the recording with you all. But really, thank you for taking the time and for joining in with such valuable questions. Do keep up with us. If you haven't signed up to our newsletter, please do so. And we try and communicate to all of our practitioners when these masterclasses come up. And we have a few events that are also just community-based. So anywhere you are, sign up to our comms and you'll receive everything, and make sure you stay looped in. We do run a few of these. So thanks so much again, Carly, and thank you, Ruth, and thank you everybody again.
Thanks, everyone. See you.